Brushstrokes of hope. She wore her best dress, hung the sign with shaking hands. Then 2 soldiers came instead. By the time she pressed play, his voice broke through the silence. "I'm proud of your heart." What she painted next healed more than herself. "Hi everyone. Welcome to the Pillow Files. Let's get started." Maya had planned everything down to the smallest detail as she lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She imagined vibrant blue balloons dangling above the living room doorway, creating an atmosphere of celebration and the long-awaited reunion. In the yard behind the house, where her father loved to sit in a chair and read the newspaper, the freshly turned soil would smell of mulch and damp spring earth, as if nature itself sensed his return. In the kitchen, where aromas lived their own lives, the rich scent of hearty stew lingered, which her mother prepared with particular care. Seared beef chunks, caramelized onions, tender carrots and parsnips, filling the house with the warmth of home. On the living room wall hung a poster Maya had made with her own hands, painted in bold gold and red letters. "Welcome home, Chief Walker. 22 years of service. Dozens of military exercises, unknown camps, and miles of unyielding dirt." This was the end of that journey, and now the house finally felt like home again. Last fall, when her father sent his final letter, Maya consciously daydreamed of this reunion. She treasured the little medallion her mother had given her, carefully wrapping it in a velvet cloth as if it could shield her from loneliness and fear. Her mother told her that men in service learn to cherish every moment, so when he returned, he would surely want to spend a few days at home before embarking on another vacation or visiting fellow servicemen. Maya painted in her mind how her father, removing his combat boots, would sit on the porch, open a jar of canned peaches, and recount everything that had happened in those 2 years, about the unusual places he'd seen, the people he'd helped, and the ones he wasn't able to save. She pictured how, upon stepping onto the front stoop, he'd scoop her into his arms, spin her around, and she'd feel that warmth once more. The same warmth that had always comforted her on the coldest nights when he called her from the world's darkest, most distant corners. She remembered, back when she was 5, racing around the yard shouting, "Daddy, it's me!" certain that his voice, somewhere far away, could hear her. Every time, she placed a small orange lion figurine on the windowsill as a reminder of bravery and loyalty, qualities he had instilled in her when he returned from his first training exercise. Years had passed since then, but each morning, that same hope stirred in her. Today, he would come home. She went to school with ease, her steps full of joy and anticipation. She planned to wear her new spring dress, sewn by her mother especially for this day, along with the brown boots that had just barely begun to scuff the canvas. She tied her long hair up in a high ponytail so wind or time could not tangle it. Her mother embraced her at the door, whispering, "It's coming soon, sweetheart." But Maya saw a flicker of uncertainty in her mother's eyes, as though her mother carried a hidden fear she would not voice. Her mother never liked to speak of bad things aloud, but sometimes Maya sensed the anxiety clenching her heart more than any words. But what if, thus, the promises that tomorrow her father would be home no longer felt the same? Even yesterday, Maya had tried to comfort her mother, saying, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." But today, she felt that her own confidence was fragile, like a thin pane of glass. But the car pulled up 2 days early. At that early hour, the street was still asleep. Amber streetlights flickered, and the faint chill of dawn still held a crisp edge to the air. Maya awoke at the soft screech of tires. On the cobblestones, an old sedan rolling toward the house. But it did not bring him. She pressed into her pillow, listening to her heart pounding wildly, as if it were warning her. This is not the train of celebration that carries him home. She glimpsed his familiar battered baseball cap sitting on the back seat, the one that used to hang from the rearview mirror. Yet the passenger seat was empty. No strong shoulders to shelter her hopeful thoughts. Instead, two officers in crisp uniforms emerged. They bowed their heads, as though carrying not news of joyful homecoming, but a heavy stone of grief. Their uniforms looked tired, the sleeves creased in a fold that barely showed the faint glint of patriotic insignia. In their eyes was no accusation, only the exhaustion of delivering news that shredded hearts and families apart. Maya's mother clutched her at the doorstep, her hands trembling like fragile leaves covered in frost of sorrow. She covered her daughter's face, trying to shield her from what was coming. Maya, curled under her blanket, heard one officer whisper, "Corporal Walker died in the line of duty." The words shattered the silence, as if ripping apart sky and earth. Her mother froze, her shoulders sagging under the weight, tears streaming down her cheeks like rain-swollen streams. In her mother's eyes, Maya saw boundless anguish. The woman who had, only yesterday, cooked pancakes and comforted her with warm milk had vanished, replaced by someone whose soul was splintered by the senselessness of war. Maya felt her legs give out, her arms go numb. In that moment, the world shrank to a void of cold and a prickling pain in her chest, as though someone had ripped her very breath from her. The officers silently folded the flag into its ceremonial case, as though carrying it forward to other homes and families struck by the same blow. Her mother sank to the ground, and Maya, clutching her mother's hand, wept, gripping a scrap of soft felt that once bound her to her father. The room became a tomb of silence, her books on the shelves stilled, and the corner lamp no longer cast the bright glow of anticipation. Maya rose and tore the poster from the wall, leaving behind pale strips of tape on the uneven paint. Her new dress, once a symbol of her burning excitement, now felt like an indifferent scrap of fabric, devoid of all meaning. The stew on the stove cooled, its warmth leaking away, as their tears left no space for hunger or thoughts of tomorrow. A week passed. Maya stopped attending her art classes. Instead of brushes and paints, she clutched her phone, scrolling through social media in search of a phantom hope for some sign. She encountered faceless photos of other students proudly sharing their happy creations, laughter bouncing across the screen, as though sorrow in other lives did not even exist. Each notification felt like a blade twisting in her chest. The cheerful world outside continued spinning, while her own life hung suspended in the impossible. Her mother worked late to avoid coming home, taking on odd jobs in the stationery store to pay for medication and groceries, knowing the death benefit payouts would never be enough. Maya sat in her room, surrounded by a silence that rammed thorns into her thoughts. In her gaze blazed an emptiness, like a small kitten left on a frozen porch at dawn, without warmth or care. On weekends they went to visit her father's grave. The rough-hewn stone bore his name and dates engraved in gold. Her mother placed snowdrops she'd secretly gathered from the forest, and Maya stood beside her, clutching a small bouquet of wild cornflowers she'd picked in the meadow. A gentle breeze whispered over the stone, as if her father quietly murmured to her from beyond, "Hold on." Her mother embraced her there, and together they stood feeling as though their hard frozen sorrow might begin to thaw, allowing a new current of grief to flow. Yet neither spoke of the upcoming birthday or the Easter holiday enveloping it, knowing her father would not be there. One day, when slanting sunlight shone through the curtained window, Maya decided to help her mother sort through old things in the garage. Tucked into a left-hand corner, she discovered an old voicemail recorder, the kind they used before cell phones existed, given to her when she was 5. It lay dust-covered, letters P, R, M, and D faint on its buttons. Inside rested the hum of old conversations, recorded in her tiny, trembling voice. "Hi, Daddy. It's me, Maya. I'm in 1st grade now. She brushed off the dust, and her fingers nudged the P button. Play. A thin beep acknowledged a count of new messages, 37, and Maya never suspected that among them lay the one message that would change everything. Though they were separated now by months and miles. In that moment she heard his voice. Deep, familiar, weary, but warm, as if a generous fire burned within it, and she knew instantly that this was one she'd never heard. Hey, little sunflower, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of your art. I'm proud of your heart. Keep showing it to the world. I'll be home real soon. The last words echoed, fading and ricocheting off the garage walls. Maya nearly dropped the recorder, but steadied it, pressing it to her chest. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't tears of bitterness. Rather, they were oddly warm, as though he had spoken to her beyond the boundaries of distance. She played those messages over and over until the batteries died and the screen went dark, leaving her in a hushed void where his words still sounded. In that moment, Maya felt a small spark rekindle in her chest, a flicker of hope learning to burn anew. He lived on in her mind, held wherever the heart cannot be touched. That evening, Maya returned to her room and lifted her brushes and paints for the first time in a long while. Her heart clenched with fear as she prepared to begin her painting. Her hand trembled when she dipped the brush into watery crimson pigment, yet that fear gave way to courage. She recalled her father telling her how her art could breathe life into what others deemed dead. The canvas, stretched on its wooden frame, seemed to thrill before her gaze, waiting for the story she needed to tell. She decided this painting would reflect her grief, her loss, and the fleeting touch of love still living within her. Over the next few days, she worked on the painting with extraordinary passion. The soft rustle of her brushes and the creak of paint across the canvas became her form of prayer. Colors danced in her mind, a deep midnight blue, resonant of the abyss of night sky, mingling with muted shades of purple that evoked the hush of evening twilight, a warm orange symbolizing the last rays of sunset, as though her father bade farewell before ascending in spirit. The canvas gradually filled with images. In the foreground stood Maya herself, an ink-dark silhouette of a girl with teardrop, earrings, her hair streaming as if caught in a breeze of memories, holding a paintbrush that traced a single dark line toward the looming figure of a man in uniform. The silhouette was hazy, as if once inhabited, but now fading into the sunlit horizon like a memory time itself sought to erase. Behind him, the sky flickered with purples and oranges, as though his soul was ascending, merging with the heavens, yet leaving behind the promise, I will always be with you. When the work was complete, Maya stepped back a few paces and studied how the blank canvas had transformed into a living tapestry of her emotions. She perceived bursts of anger, glimpses of pain, moments of loss, and sudden flashes of hope. With each look, her agony subsided, like wounds once raw now beginning to heal. She felt tears welling, but they were not tears of sorrow. Rather, they acknowledged that she had finally found a way to speak to him through the language of paint. Tears fell onto the floor beside the canvas, leaving tiny wet spots, tangible proof that her art was alive and real. The next morning, Maya quietly carried the painting out of the house, wrapping it in a bedsheet so nobody would see. Her bare feet made soft sounds on the creaky staircase as she reflected on how it would be if her father walked through the door and saw this. She would stand before him, paint-streaked, eyes shining, and he would be proud. Waves of excitement electrified her. Each movement as she carried the canvas felt like a confession. She was ready to show her soul to the world. She bowed her head to avoid her mother's gaze, but her mother already saw in her daughter's determined posture the weight of that unspoken communication. Her father's message, hidden in the voicemail, had moved her to action. She boarded the crowded bus with the canvas clutched to her lap, preserving it like a sacred relic. City blocks smelled of coffee, lacquered wood in gallery halls, and the soft glow of spotlights. Her trembling hand held the last few dollars she had, scraps of change left after paying bills, but she was prepared to spend every cent to have her painting judged by the public. She braced herself, stepping into a small gallery where she'd once visited a youth art exhibit, walls adorned with Piers works, framed under soft lights that imparted an aura of reverence. The young woman behind the counter glanced up as Maya handed her the canvas, not daring to look fully into her eyes. The gallery owner took the painting, ran his fingertip along its lower edge, as though listening for the whisper of its message. His brows furrowed slightly, lips parted in a faint half-smile. "This is very powerful work," he said, each word softly spoken, as if not to break the delicate boundary between sight and the concealed world of feeling. "We can include it in our youth showcase. The exhibit opens in a week." Maya's heart hammered 1,000 beats a minute. Excitement merged with panic and an overwhelming sense of pride. She nodded, the single word yes, capable of altering everything. When the gallery owner signed the participation form, Maya felt a warm lump melt within her chest. She had taken the first step towards showing her pain, her love, and her courage to the world. Trembling with excitement and fear, she whispered, "Thank you." The days leading up to the exhibit placed a peculiar weight on her shoulders, as though her entire being awaited a midnight awakening. Each time she gazed at the place in her room where the canvas had stood, she felt a thrill. Her mother tried to restore their routine, baking bread again, coming home early to lie beside her daughter in bed, softly reminding her, life goes on. But Maya's inner world had changed, forever. The threads that once tied her to her father now felt like a bridge to the future. She could no longer imagine herself sitting at home in darkness. Her spirit demanded release, and she knew she could not turn back once she'd taken that step. On opening night, Maya's head spun as she walked through the narrow gallery corridor, where walls glowed with fellow young artists' works. The air buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the subtle scent of perfume mingled with dry paint. She approached her painting, and for the first few seconds, she barely recognized it. People paused before it, examining the details. Paint-laden, strokes, subtle color transitions, flickers of light conveying that the canvas's story was coming alive. Some photographed it with their phones, whispering to one another as they admired how one painting could embody such depths of feeling. Her work stood among the others like a quiet beacon of loss and hope, an immortalized cry of the soul now, finally permitted to be heard by the world. It smelled of paint and dust, yet imparted a sense that the very canvas breathed, its breath echoing her own. The gallery owner approached, smiling. He bowed his head slightly, as though savoring the news he was about to deliver. "You have a buyer," he said softly, trying not to draw too much attention to the young artist. "A local woman who recently lost her father saw your painting and said it gave her hope. She's ready to purchase it right now." When he named the price, Maya felt her heart nearly leap out of her chest. It was double what she'd expected. Tears filled her eyes, and she nodded, understanding. Her father lived on in that painting, and she had done exactly what he'd always wanted. She had shown her art to the world. As the gallery owner prepared the paperwork, Maya glimpsed the expressions of passers-by. Some felt pain as they gazed. Some covered their mouths as though overcome with emotion. Some stood with their faces hidden in their hands, powerless against their feelings. In that moment, she realized her painting was not just a swirl of colors on canvas, but a living memory, now offering hope to someone else. She returned home slowly, feeling as though in a daze, clutching the envelope with the check and a small notebook in which she had written the words she wished she could say to her father if he were there. Her mind buzzed with thanks, confessions, and promises, all demanding an outlet. She whispered them into the notebook as if her father could hear her from somewhere beyond. Her mother waited at the door, an unexpected, gentle smile across her face, the same kind Maya had not seen since the funeral. Maya pressed the check into her mother's palm and said, "Daddy helped me. He sent me that message." Her mother nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, pride shining through them for her daughter, who had found a way to move forward through her art. Her mother already knew about the old recorder and that hidden message they had discovered, but she let Maya say it herself. This was her moment, her gift from a father who now shone through her brushstrokes and colors. Their gazes met, and in that quiet moment, unspoken words carried more weight than anything spoken aloud. That night, Maya lay down, clutching the painting that had been sold, as though her father himself had come home to stay. In the darkness, she pressed the canvas to her chest and slowly closed her eyes, imagining him opening the door and saying, "I'm home." On the table beside her bed, still hung the poster, "Welcome home, Chief Walker." The balloons had long since deflated, but the paper tassels still clung to the wall as though ready to soar with her dreams. Maya smiled and whispered, "I'm showing you to the world." For the first time in many days, she fell asleep with a gentle sense that his voice was no longer just an echo of the past, but a living warmth capable of comforting her, even when he could not be there. After all, his true return had happened through her heart, through her art, and through every canvas that now carries his love forward. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the quiet power of kindness. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss what happens when a single moment changes everything. See you in the next one.